Hey, I am Dr. Jake Patton. I'm your professor for SHS 367, Language Science. Let's talk about the class for a little bit. Um, so, I originally conceived of this class as a podcast based class. Most of your lectures are still going to be in podcast form, um, but some people don't work that way. It's hard to take in information by just listening without any visuals, and so there are slides now to go along with that. First iteration was just podcast. Um, some people found it great, other people didn't. And I mean, the reasons are like, a lot of you are probably non traditional students. You work, maybe you have kids. There's other demands on your time, which forces you to be an online student, especially those of you who are ASU online students and you're in Arizona, which I know there's a few of you. So clearly, you have other life circumstances that don't allow you to come to like in person classes. So hopefully, this is beneficial for you. You can still get everything out of just listening to the podcast if this works for you. Um, if you've had other classes with me, I do like a ton of videos. I like doing videos. But they're kind of I don't know. They're a little restrictive. Some of the topics though, like anatomy, don't really know how you could do just a podcast on that. So that's kind of harder. So that's why I tried with this one. Um, you could listen while you're driving. You can listen while you're doing housework and stuff like that. I listen to podcasts while I mow the lawn. Love mowing the lawn and listening to podcasts. It's great. If you there's a few different ways that you can find these lectures. One, they're all on Canvas, so you don't have to do anything extra. You can listen directly on Canvas um, in each module. And that, if you're not like a podcast person, that is probably the best idea for you. Like if this is kind of new, you're not really into them, this is the best way. Just listen on Canvas, have it playing while you look at the slides. So open the slides first, then go to the page with the audio lecture, listen to the audio lecture, and follow along on the slides with the audio lecture. And that'll be more like a traditional lecture style for you. If you are a podcast person, a free place that I put my lectures is Castbox. So you can download that and use it. When I first put the lectures on Castbox, it was like 100%. It's still 100% free. You don't have to pay for anything. But now they make it look like you do. So when I first put them on there, it was like you downloaded it and it was like, okay, you're ready to start listening. Have fun. Um, Now they're kind of like, okay, before you start listening, we want to try to make you think that you have to buy something. You don't, but they're going to make you think that you do. I'm going to walk you through what the screens are that they give you so you don't accidentally pay for anything in a second. But I will say for everyone, no matter how you take in these audio lectures, look at the show notes before and after listening. Show notes is like a podcast thing. It's like images or documents that you might want to see before listening, and then also check them out again after listening. If you forget, it's not a huge thing. You can just look at them afterwards. But sometimes you might get a little more out of it if you look at the images beforehand. Okay, so if you're gonna listen on Canvas, just fast forward by like 2 minutes. If you're gonna listen on Castbox, here's what they're trying to do to you. So you're gonna download this, and your first image is they're gonna be like, "Look, we've got podcasts." Okay, great. So you hit continue. Then they're gonna say you can enable offline listening, which means it'll just like download the podcasts that you subscribe to. This is up to you if you want to do this or not. You can click not now, or you can click continue. If you click continue, it enables it. It downloads stuff to your phone or tablet or whatever you're listening on. If you click not now, it does not do that. Up to you. It doesn't matter. This is not where they're tricking you. It's just showing that like there's a dark continue button, and then there's a dark continue button, and then there's a log in, like sign in. You don't have to sign in, even though they're tricking you by putting that big dark button in the same place. Like you just get used to clicking right there. There's a not now. You don't have to sign in with Facebook. You can make your own account on just this that isn't linked to Facebook, or you don't have to sign in at all. You can click not now up above right here, and you don't have to do any of that. And then here's the other thing. This is when it gets nuts. 3 days free trial is the one that they bold for you, and your other options are $3.99 a month, $7.99 a month. Up at the top, where they have trained you not to look for anything, there's an X. Click the X. This is how you. It's free, because this is for premium. It doesn't matter if you have premium. Like, they don't put ads on my show. Nobody listens to my show. It's just for you. So there's no ads. So click the X, and then you're fine. Listen to my thing. Again, my thing, there's no ads. I don't bring in enough listeners for them to put ads on it. So, which is good. I think if I did, it'd probably be a problem. But it's like just students that are listening to this. So that's great. Okay, so remember, they're training you. This is like a thing. This is like your first lesson in the class. This is psycholinguistics, but it comes from like psychology. This is the psychology of linguistics. This is absolutely a psychology principle that they're using on you. They're training you. They're training your behavior. We'll talk about behaviorism. In the first module, we're going to talk about behaviorism. They're training you. They're reinforcing your behavior of looking down at the bottom of the screen, not really at the top. If you just want to get right to listening, continue. Uh-oh. And the X is up at the top. So they're using behaviorist principles to fool you into getting CastBox Premium. You don't need to. There is a free option. I don't want you to pay for anything. I also think this seems like it'd be illegal if I made you pay for things. Oh, no, we make you buy textbooks. Anyway, so click the X. Don't buy the thing. Okay. Or you can listen on Canvas if that seems like not a thing you want on your phone. Just listen on Canvas. That's fine. This is the same lecture, the same audio file uploaded in multiple places. There are also, I forgot to mention this, there are also transcripts. So if you're not a person who likes to listen, you'd rather read, there's transcripts. If you have a disability, auditory processing disorder, perhaps hard of hearing, there are transcripts for you. And these are good transcripts from, I used to post transcripts that were done by AI, but Sales has helped me create even better transcripts. So that's what's available to you. Really good, high quality transcripts that we've looked at. That doesn't mean there's no errors, but there are fewer errors. Okay, so here's a little bit about me. My face is in the way of the stuff I'm talking about. So I was born in Mesa. Those of you who are from Arizona, you know about Mesa. If you're not from Arizona, it doesn't matter if you know about Mesa. It's a city. It's, there it is. Graduated from Hamilton. So again, if you're from Arizona, you may have heard of Hamilton. It's in Chandler. Our claim to fame was when I went to school there, the entire baseball team was arrested for dealing drugs. So that's Hamilton. That's a good, it's one of those. Basically, if you've seen 21 Jump Street, it's that school, but without the undercover cops. So then I went to ASU, Bachelor of Science, ASU, Master of Art. You get a master's in passing in the PhD program, but they give you a Master of Arts for in passing. And then I got a PhD in cognitive science. Cognitive science is an interesting thing. I have cognitive psych on here. We now try to distance ourselves from the term psychology because when people who are not in the biz hear psychology, they think that, it's like therapy. And it's not at all. Cognitive science puts together biology. It's like the furthest thing you could be from a psychologist, like a clinical psychologist. It's weird, actually, that they're in the same basic discipline. Cognitive science puts together biology, math, physics, um, statistics, and maybe a little traditional psychology. Mostly what we're looking at is like how are people um, experiencing the world. So we study the senses, all the, proprioception, which is like your internal like messages coming from like your muscles and the orientation of your joints in space, vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, all this stuff. Um, Also memory, uh, cognition, reading, speaking, all this kind of stuff. Right. So it really lends itself well to psycholinguistics. In fact, psycholinguistics comes out of, it's just a branch of psychology, specifically a branch of cognitive science. And then my specialty areas in cognitive science were auditory and visual processing, which is how I ended up at the speech and hearing department here at ASU. Is my research with the auditory system. Like, how do we hear things? How do we hear music? How do we hear speech? And what are important dimensions of those things to conveying emotion or to conveying information about the sound source? We'll talk more about that throughout the course of the class. And then I also do some visual perception stuff. I'm also a runner. One of the things that I like to tell my students is that this may apply less to online students. Like we talked about, you have more constraints on you. You're probably you have your sights set on something and you're going to go through and do that, and that's great. My in-person students that are like 18, well, by the time they get in my 205 class, they're 19 or 20. But I encourage them to like check out other things for electives, because I changed my major, I think 5 times when I was in college, and finally landed in cognitive science, which is where I wanted to be. That's why I got a PhD in it. But I started out in screenwriting, and then I went to radio, did some acting. Then I went into creative writing. I was going to get a PhD in that, but the only thing you can really do with that is edit like writing journals. One of my professors told me that, like, you should not do this. You should do something that makes money. And was going to go into therapy, psychology, and then found cognitive psychology. What I didn't do was do the thing that makes money. Like, I make money, but not, I mean, he thought I'd make good money and keep writing. Nah, it's fun though. Okay, let's see. Some research. I want to talk about some research. So, this is the research that I do. One of the fun things, we're going to talk about this in the class, so I'm not going to talk a ton about it now. But I do some research with swear words. And this graph right here is showing that we use phonemes differently. The rate of phoneme usage for regular words is different for regular words versus swear words. The dark bar is American swear words. The light bars are like just random American words, subset of random American words. And you can see that the rates of usage are different. Right here, and well, there's actually something interesting going on with we'll talk about that. But and tend to be used a lot more for swear words. And this says something about the history, how we use sounds to convey meaning, and how we use sounds to decide what words feel like emotionally. Like I said, we're going to talk about this more towards the end of the class. There's a whole lecture on this. So I'm not going to talk about it a ton right now. And then also, hopefully by the end of this class, I'll have if you're interested in this, a preprint of a paper that I'm writing on this research that you can read if you want to. Maybe it'll actually be by May. It's not going to be published by May, but you might have a preprint by May. I've also researched the dundun drum, which is a Nigerian drum it's often called the talking drum. The reason it's called the talking drum is because unlike most drums would just go like, drums. This has where you see the guy's left arm, there's some strings there, and you can kind of put this drum like in a headlock. And the tighter you grab onto the strings, the tighter it makes the top of the drum. So you can make it go like boom, 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 like that. So it has a pitch to it instead of just a percussive drum surface. So what's cool about this is people in Nigeria, well, it's used outside of Nigeria too, but it's called different things. Well, it's called gangan also in parts of Nigeria. There's other dundun drums, but they're all similar. They can be used to represent speech because Yoruba, which is one of the many languages spoken in Nigeria, but one of the prominent languages spoken in southern Nigeria, is a tonal language, which means that the tones are important. There's a high, middle, and low tone. And so the tones are important. So if you say agbon versus agbon, it's a totally different word. And so you can do that with the drum. You can do that with the talking drum and essentially just replicate speech with the drum. So one of the things we were looking at was like, what about the pitch differences and the micro timing? How close does that relate to actual speech? And it's like, it's tight, man. It's super tight. It's just like speech. So everything that we do with the mouth, the pitch differences that we make, the timing differences that we have between syllables, I guess we, meaning people who speak Yoruba, which I don't, is exactly the same thing that people who play the talking drum in Yoruba do with the talking drum. So it's exactly the same motions. Really tight coupling. What else? Oh, those characteristics aren't present when it's just playing as music. So you can play the drum as music and it's different. It's more like just a musical instrument then. So it's got they call it different modes, and we've proved that it is actually different modes. Like it's played entirely differently. You can think about this as like speaking versus whistling. That's a totally different thing. So that's really cool. We have 2 papers on that. If you're super interested in it, you can look them up. Just look up Patton Dundun, and you'll find me and my colleagues' cool work on. One of those is down at the bottom. This one. This one got kind of sort of popular in the music world for a little while. We did interviews about this, so that was fun. The new one just came out. Nobody's talked to us about it yet. It's got a lot more math in it, so probably I'm not anticipating anybody contacting us to have us do interviews about that. They're like, oh, tell us about all this math. It's not going to happen. Tetrachromacy is 4 color cones. Most of us have 3 color cones. And I'm working with some people who are genetically confirmed to have 4 different color cones in their eyes. This is also a thing I'm hoping to have a preprint of by May. So again, if you're interested in these, I can post announcements in the class, and you can look at them if you like. What else do I got? Oh, we're going to talk about this in class. So this is like real research that came out not that long ago. It's kind of like 5 years ago now. So sort of a while ago. That's actually informing what we talk about in the class. This is how we find words, where our brain goes while we're foraging for ideas. And so this is absolutely just like what we talk about in the class. It informs speech, how we're speaking. So I've actually got research that not just swearing, but also this thing on memory foraging for words that is what we're learning in class. So like real, sort of cutting edge swear word one is more cutting edge. 5 years, I'm not sure that's really cutting edge anymore. That edge is kind of dull at this point, but it's a fun paper, and it's there for you to read. But it's also like I summarize it in the lecture, so you don't have to read it if you don't want to, but you can if you're interested. And then the last thing I do is some work on Alzheimer's. This is a study that we did with Alzheimer's where we're looking at possibly potentially ways to identify Alzheimer's early. That really doesn't come into play with the class a ton. Well, actually, maybe I'll record like an additional thing because it does. We use the linguistic task for that Alzheimer's research. So we actually might talk about that a little bit more. Let's move on. The class. There's 4 exams. Your lowest exam is dropped. So what does this mean for you? This means if you screw up, if you have a legitimate reason for missing an exam, like if you're in the hospital, there's huge storms right now. So if you're impacted by these and that impact goes into the second week when we have our first exam, let me know. You will have extra time to take your exam if there's like a thing out of your control that's happening. If you're going to like a wedding or you got drunk and you couldn't take your exam, well, that's different. I mean, more power to you. But the exams are open for 3 days. So you should be able to find time to take it. If you don't, and you don't have like a reason, then, you know, you've missed it. But that's okay because if it happens once, that's dropped. And you have 3 other exams that'll make up for that score. If that doesn't happen to you, you have 4 attempts. Your highest 4 attempts will be counted and the lowest one won't be. And the other thing about this is if you're one of those extra diligent students who make sure that they get like an A plus on every exam, then theoretically you don't have to take the final because you've got an A plus, A plus, A plus. No matter what you get on this one, it's probably going to be dropped. So you have it go in as a 0. It'll show up as a 0 for a little bit. And then when I turn on the exam drop thing, it goes away and your 3 A pluses remain and you get an A plus in the class. And it's a great time for you and me. Cause it's great when people get an A plus. I like clicking A pluses when I put the grades down. It means that I'm also doing a good job. So you may not have to take your final if you like the scores you got. You can take it if you want to see if you get a better score, or it's a safety net in case you miss one of the exams. Cool. There's also 8 quizzes. I just flicked my microphone. Sorry about that. There's also 8 quizzes in the class. They all have 2 attempts. What I want you to do is the first time. Oh, wait. Let's backtrack. Exams. No, I've got a slide on it. Never mind. Power through. Quizzes. There's 2 attempts for each quiz. The first time you go through, I want you to treat it like an exam. Go in, no notes, raw dog this thing, and see how you do. When you get your grade back, I want you, if you got a perfect score, move on. Don't even use your second attempt. If you did miss something, I want you to get your notes out and get full points the second time. So the first time, go through, figure out what you missed, figure out where you need to study. The quizzes reflect what are going to be on the exam, the questions that are going to be on the exam. So if you miss something in the quiz, you're probably going to miss it on the exam. Use that to inform your studying. Second time through, just get all the points. Get your notes out, make sure you get all the points. That's for quizzes. Quizzes are open note, but I would prefer that you use the first attempt, not open note. There are also various homeworks for each module. So like sentence diagramming is one thing we're going to do. There's some hands-on research. There's fun competitions that you'll play with your family or friends, or potentially other students if you don't have family and friends that will put up with your BS for class. you can hook up with another student and do that online as well. Here's about exams. Okay, so exams are closed note. They are not open note. You're going to be using the Respondus Lockdown browser and the monitor, which means that the camera is going to be on. If you've had any classes with me before, this is like standard stuff for you. You have to have a webcam. You have to have a quiet place to take the exam. You're going to have to show them where you're taking the exam. If there's weird noises, or you are looking off the screen a bunch, it's going to flag the exam. So I have to review it. If you have kids that are crying, it's going to flag it, but it's not a big deal. Like if your dog walks in, it's probably going to flag it. It's not a big deal. If you are, I had one person that is like, graduated high school early. They're 17. They were taking my class. Their dad walked in and asked what they wanted for dinner, and they were worried that it was, going to get flagged. It did get flagged. It's not a big deal. Like I can tell what is a normal life weird occurrence and what isn't. So don't worry about things that might get flagged that aren't like attempts at academic dishonesty. It's fine. It's obvious what is and what isn't. So you're good. Here's the thing. They're 90-minute exams. You probably won't need 90 minutes. They're about 30 questions long. So that's 3 minutes per question. You can take up to that time if you want. If you have accommodations from sales, of course, this is different for you. You may have 45 or 90 extra minutes on top of that, depending on what your accommodations say. But the only thing I think that's really going to be a problem for everyone is you can't go back on these. Don't leave any questions blank. This isn't that kind of exam where you can like go through, I don't know that one, I'm going to come back to it. You got to answer it. I know that sucks. It's not what we want to do, but all of the online classes for speech and hearing should be moving this way because there's a ton of academic dishonesty, both in person and online. It's not just the online students. And it comes from, if you can go back to the questions, people will text answers to each other. If you can't go back, that becomes less likely because the questions are like jumbled up. So you can't like have a person that's telling you the answers and then you go back to those and answer them because you can't go back. It also takes more time to do that, which is why we have a 90-minute time limit on these. They're only open for 3 days to avoid, people taking it early and figuring out what the questions are. There's also question banks, so it's unlikely that anyone in the class is going to get an identical exam. And then lastly, you can't look at your exams unless you come to office hours. But just send me or your TA an email and we will go over your exam with you. You absolutely can see what you got wrong. The absolute best way to study once you've taken an exam, like to learn, is to see what you got wrong. Just getting an 80 on an exam doesn't tell you anything about your knowledge. So it's good for you to look at it. I encourage you to do this with us. And yeah, just set up a time. Send us an email. We're more than happy to do that. I'm also going to have office hours during the 3 days that the exams are open. Probably not the first day. So it's time that you can come and ask questions. If you have questions about studying, it's probably on the second day, towards the end of the first day, maybe the end of the second day. So you should still have 1 day to take the exam. So you have questions, come in and ask questions. If you've taken it, some people like to use this time to like take it early and then come into the office hours when I'm there and look at what they got wrong. This is all fine. No problem at all. It's whatever you want to do is good. There's extra credit in this class. You might get extra credit for participating in research studies. Either my research studies or other colleagues of mine may have research studies, but there's definitely going to be at least one extra credit thing that you can do in the class to contribute to research and get extra credit. Here's a PSA that I like to give about DRC/SAILS. DRC was Disability Resource Center. It's now called SAILS, which is Student Accessibility and Inclusive Learning Solutions? Something. Whatever. Um, you can visit them in person. You can visit them online. Uh, Obviously, if you don't live in Arizona or you're like not near a campus, online's probably the option for you. But if you think that you could use some sort of accommodation, this is probably where you want to be. Um, so, what does that mean, accommodation? I had a student a few years ago who, um, this was an in person class. They were taking exams. Open dyslexic font. Okay. He told me that, you know, he was getting like 70s, and I wasn't looking at the pattern of answers that he was giving me that created these grades. Like some people just get, 70 on exams, and that's where they prefer to be, I guess. And so he came up one day and he's like, I just don't have time. Like, there's not enough time to do the exams like I want to. And I see everybody leaving and I'm still here working. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I looked at his exam and it seemed true. Like, if you look only at what he answered, he was getting close to 100%. But then there was like a whole third of the exam, quarter or third of the exam that was just not answered because he didn't have time to complete it. And so I said, "What is going on? Like why does it take you so long?" And he said, "I have to read the question multiple times to make sure that I'm like seeing what each word says." And so this sounds like dyslexia. And so I said, you should probably go to sales and get tested for dyslexia. And it turned out he was dyslexic. Um, he was smart enough that it just wasn't caught when he was in grade school, because even though it took him longer to read things, there were like other people who weren't dyslexic who were also taking a long time to read things. So he could just like kind of like get fly by. Smart enough that you can kind of like infer what things are asking. And then it became a problem when he went to college and started doing exams where there's a ton of words. Um, my questions maybe are too wordy also. So, especially in anatomy, if you've had it, that's true. Um, so it was kind of slowing him down. Sales told him that he should download this font. It's called Open Dyslexic. It works for some people. There's multiple types of dyslexia, and depending on the type, this helps people. Having this like kind of funky, it's like a funky 60s font sort of, but with this like big fat bottom on it, it helps keep the letters organized for some reason. Also, some people without dyslexia say that this is easier to read for them as well. It's a free font. You can download it, probably in multiple places. So you should do that. You should download this if this seems easier for you to read. If you don't know how to add fonts to your computer, you can email me. You can also look it up on YouTube and figure it out that way. So anyway, the point of this is to say, if there's something that seems like it's slowing you down, auditory processing disorder, like you just can't, like, I'm listening to things and it's not making sense, test anxiety, all sorts of stuff like this, just talk to sales. They have ways to assess what might be going on with you. And if you don't qualify for any of these accommodations, nobody knows. I don't get notified that you went in. None of your instructors do. None of your family does. It's between you and sales if you don't qualify. So why not? And then if you do qualify, of course, your instructors are notified. No one else is. And it's one of those FERPA things. Is it FERPA or HIPAA? It's FERPA. It's FERPA, right? Yeah, right? Anyway, we can't tell anybody. Just me, possibly your TA will get an email about, like, because they need to know that you may have extra time or to take an exam or extra time to turn things in. Your family's friends won't know. And of course, it can mean the difference between success and failure. So check it out. Other PSA I like to tell people is there is student health. This only applies really to you if you're in person, not in person. If you're within Arizona, I believe online students, if you live in the state, can still go to student health center if you need uh, like medical help. And supposedly there's waivers for low income students. I think you have to be pretty low income to get the waivers, like lower than you would expect. But if that applies to you, you may be able to get free or low cost healthcare at Student Health. So check it out. Call them, I guess, if you need it, and see if you qualify. Counseling is online also, so this applies to everybody in the class if you need it. ASU Counseling has free consultation, free services. I think you get like 14 appointments or something like that for free. So if you have, something going on, academically or not, you can make an appointment with them and meet with somebody for free. Again, that's ASU Counseling, ASU Health, and Sales. These are things you should just know about. Maybe they don't apply to you. If they don't, that's awesome. But you never know when they could. So it's good to know about it, even if it doesn't apply to you right now. Okay, last thing. This is your first assignment. Some of you have already looked at this, but you're going to introduce yourself to me, to your classmates, to your TA. What's your favorite book? There's some discussion if audiobook is this counts as reading. Hell yeah, it does in this class. Absolutely. I mean, it's a different modality, but you're still having to put the things together and build the. Yeah, it counts. Audiobooks are fine. I've got a list of mine in the assignment, so I'm not going to talk about those. You can read about those. Those are still favorite books. It's okay to have 10 favorites. That's fine. Actually, so all the ones I have on the assignment are not nerdy. And I realized that here at home I have those are at home too, but in home office I have a ton of nerdy books that I consider my favorites. So the first one is I actually own a publishing company, and we published this book on Russian hybrid warfare, which is what Russia is doing with Ukraine and how everyone could have predicted what's going on there based on what they've done geopolitically since 2000. Cool book. I didn't write it. I was an editor, but it was a great book. And then this is a book called Scientific Writing. Look how thin it is. It's amazing. If you write papers, you should look at this. If you have to write papers for your classes, look for Scientific Writing. It's called Scientific Writing for Psychology. It's not just for psychology. It's for anything. By Robert Cale. But if you have to write papers for class, or if you end up doing research or something, it's an excellent book. The chapters are 5 pages long. And it's just tips to make yourself suck less. And everybody can suck less. Even if you're a good writer, there's still some amount of suckitude. Let's stay with super nerdy. This is too nerdy almost. This is a tiny book on multidimensional scaling. It's an analysis method that I like to use for my research. Again, it's tiny. I love tiny books. Because when you're trying to do something fast, write or analyze, you don't want to read a 500-page book. So anyway, that's great. If you're a math nerd, you should pick that one up. Look for the whole Little Green Book series from Sage. They're amazing if you're a math nerd. And then the last one is this 9 Nasty Words by John McWhorter. He has a great podcast. It's ended now. It's called Lexicon Valley. There's 2 or 3 iterations of Lexicon Valley. There's 3 iterations of Lexicon Valley. The first one is 2 dudes. And it's called Lexicon Valley. It changes to this guy, and it's just him for a while, and that's good. And then it changed to a different name. I wish I could remember. It's canceled now. Also, but it was a 3rd iteration. It was a dude and a lady, and she actually does that last person does research similar to what I do. So that was cool. This guy is a linguist. I'm not sure he's like a researchy linguist. He kind of just, not in the same way, not like bringing people in and asking them questions. But he is a professor somewhere. Anyway, this is all about swear words. It's an excellent book about swear words if you want to read more. I've actually got in my home office bookcase over there like six books on swear words, like all the books, all the academic texts on swear words that have ever been written. So it's like the Library of Alexandria here, but just for swear words. So that's it. Tell me your favorite books. Audiobooks absolutely work. That's it. That's it. You've reached the end of this video. Okay, see you in the class.